Hello, Rachel here with my husband Davis, and we're going to be talking right now about what it looks like to homeschool in high school. Scary stuff. It seems like maybe you can do it kindergarten through 6th, 7th, maybe 8th, but when we start talking about 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th, whoa, is that possible?
Well, it's certainly possible. We've homeschooled 26 years.
I know we
graduated
did.
all 7
We
of
survived.
them. We made it. But I do remember 13, 14 years ago when our oldest was entering 9th grade. Actually, it would have been longer than that.
Yeah.
And suddenly I found myself going to support group meetings to figure out how do we do high school.
I know.
So it's where the rubber meets the road.
It does.
It's where this is now serious and where you want to do it right. You want to do it well, and this is where your transcript is going to be made from. And so
this is your permanent record.
This is serious business. But I'm going to start by saying I really want to encourage the families not to quit when they get to 9th grade.
Amen.
Continue. And why would I say that? Because I'm going to tell you the truth right here. The most valuable diploma in the world is a homeschool diploma.
It's true.
Hang on and we'll find out exactly why. But that's not just because I'm an advocate or proponent of homeschooling. It's actually very true with some evidence to back it up. But let's talk about how do you do high school?
I think it's important before we jump right into that, and we're going to do that. But I just want to validate how terrifying it is. Because I really felt like we're rolling along with the kids. We're having reading time, and we're doing rockets on the driveway, and we're doing cross stitch and Legos and all these activities in the woods, and life is just glorious and good, and I can shut it down and I can open it up. And then we hit high school and I'm like, what are we doing? Because I really did. I felt like even though I knew it was coming, that freshman year, for our oldest, I really wasn't sure I could breathe.
It felt like we were starting all over again.
It really did. And like you, I was online at all the websites that I knew to go to, all the places that everybody had told me to go to, but that I didn't go to until I had to go to them. And I'm reading everything, and I'm just feeling like somebody put 1,000 pounds on my back, and I'm face down in the sand going, I don't know if I can do this. But I think that was a good thing, because I really do believe one of the most glorious, it's not going to sound glorious, I really believe one of the most glorious things about homeschooling is you get to come to the end of yourself. Mm-hmm. You get to a point where you finally figure out that you can't. And, you know, I tend to be capable. You and I are both D personalities. We like our to-do list. We like to check things off. We're very task-oriented. Those aren't prerequisites for home education. In fact, you could argue that some of those are massive negatives for home education. But we tend to be able to roll along, right? Homeschooling is very humbling. And not only is it humbling, there's lots of opportunity for repentance. And you get those moments when they're younger, especially with the character issues, but when you get to high school, you start to realize you really can't. You really need God. Even now, with all of the resources that are available, and there's so many, sorting through them's a thing. You know, trying to figure out what is the best curriculum for us as a family and for this student, that is a challenge. But I just want to encourage parents, if you're sensing this overwhelm, it's not a reason to quit. It's not a reason to put them on the bus. It's not a reason to surrender to the other team. It's a reason to dig your heels in and say, yeah, no, we're doing this.
Right.
We're doing this. I many years ago, Mike Smith did a presentation at one of the conferences we were at, and he talked about the high school years being the stake in the ground moment. And I think it's the best presentation Mike ever gave. But I was in the audience and I was like, that's it. Because this is a moment when you want to quit, because it just seems like it just looms so large. But it is a glorious time. I think, even with all the fun that we had in elementary, I think high school was my favorite. And I think it was because the conversations we had.
Right.
All of these different things that we could do. We could read this amazing literature based on everything else we'd read. You know, we got into Dickens and Austen and all of this great literature. And then we could watch movies and dissect movies, and then we were getting deeper into theology and the Bible, and we could have all of those conversations. I mean, these were human beings now. They could read and have conversations, and it wasn't easy, but it was awesome. It was like a rush when they got to high school.
Well, it was, and yet there was this seriousness about,
it's true.
Okay, we want to make sure that they're prepared
Right.
for whatever God has plan for them after high school.
Yeah.
And one of the things we do want to make clear is that there's not one set path that any child should take after high school. Matter of fact, one of the beauties of homeschooling is you're already thinking outside the box.
Right.
You have stepped way outside most people's comfort zone if you're homeschooling. When your child graduates from high school, don't think that you have to put them back in the box that everybody else is going into.
Yeah.
And once again, that's all new territory. But they could go into a trade school, they could go straight to work, they could go to community college, they could take a mentorship type apprentice program, they could go to college. There's all kinds of options, and the key is to know what is God planning for this child. And then, as you were saying, the hard part, the faith component, is relying on God for those results.
Yeah.
And we have story after story with our kids where we had a plan, but then God redirected all of our steps, and we learned with each successive kid how to put our faith and trust in God with each time and not panic when we were thrown a curveball.
Panic was tempting, though.
It was.
Because it was different for all 7. None of them went exactly the same.
Well, they didn't. Each child is different, and each of their paths that they ended up taking was very different.
Yeah.
But I did mention a word, planning.
Yeah.
And that was really my big takeaway when our oldest was entering 9th grade and I went to these support group meetings. The best way to do high school well academically is to put together a plan.
I agree.
Knowing it'll adjust, but basically looking at, okay, what do we want the next 4 years to look like?
Right.
Are they going to go to college? If so, then we need to factor in some foreign languages, some science, math, etc.
Right.
If they're going to go to a trade school, well, then let's get them some apprenticeship programs, some part-time jobs in that field.
Right.
If they're going to do something else, tailor the high school years, the plan, that 4-year plan, to where they think God is calling them. And that's going to require discussions and conversations with your rising adults as they become older and start thinking for themselves.
You know, and I'm hoping that as we have these conversations, we're able to give tips that people don't think about, right? One of them here is, I think this takes a lot of voices. I think it's really helpful if your students have other people speaking into their lives about what they're seeing and what they understand and different experiences that they had, so they can sort through a lot. Because, you know, the oldest, the firstborn, is a challenge because we've never done this before, and this is different from, we weren't second generation homeschoolers. So when we were looking at this for our first son, we really needed other people to say, well, I'm seeing this, and I'm seeing this, and this is what I did, and have you considered this? That's really helpful. It's helpful on 2 fronts. One, it brings in new ideas that you and I were unaware of, which is great. It also it enforces what we've already said.
Yes.
Because, you know, this is one of those things that is a true thing, and that is often parents don't get credit for all of the wisdom that they have been pouring into their children because the kids just take it for granted, right? It's when somebody else says it that they go, oh, you're not going to believe this little piece of wisdom that somebody said, and you're like, I've been saying that to you for 18 years. And that's okay.
You're right. You just have to humble yourself
and
say they finally got the message.
Exactly. And just thank God that it finally got through. But that's what we did, you know, with the plan is, you know, laying out. So there's an old saying that says, how do you eat an elephant? 1 bite at a time. And so when you lay out a plan of where you think you're going, right, and there's scripture for that, a man plans his step, but a man plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps. So as you lay it out, then you faithfully go, okay, this is the bites we're going to take freshman year. These are the bites we're going to take sophomore year. And just do it 1 year at a time. Picking out what you need just 1 year at a time and faithfully going 1 year at a time. Because you and I can tell stories, I don't know that we have time today, how some of those plans were interrupted like junior year, or in one instance, the fall of a senior year. One of our kids didn't have a senior year. I mean, all different kinds of things that, you know, we thought we were going this way and we thought we were checking off all the right boxes, only to find that we didn't ever put that box on the list. So it's just one day at a time. It's like a more intense faith journey, I think, than elementary was. Right. But again, you get to see God at work more deliberately.
Well, and again, because we don't have time to share all the stories, but every one of our 7 kids had a relying on God for the results story.
Oh, yeah.
Where God filled in gaps, that were huge that we couldn't figure out on our own. And in many ways, it's wonderful to look back on and to realize it wasn't all us figuring it out.
Right.
God intervened. He was very much a part of the process, and whose hands are better to be in than his.
Exactly.
But I want to also mention that 4 of our 7 kids did a gap year program.
Yeah.
Once again, just to say that there's so many options for the path your kids might take after high school. And then even after high school, once again, their paths may take different straight or curved paths as they continue down their life, their education, their career, whatever direction they're heading at the time.
You know, and it occurs to me as we're sitting here that it might be beneficial also to say that you can think when you're entering into high school that you need to have it all figured out, you know, what the end game is, and you don't. Because there was a lot of that change in here. There's a lot of value, even when kids are little, to chase their dreams. You know, I think all boys at some point want to be a policeman or a fireman. And it's great. Go to the fire station, take them cookies, sit in the truck, chase that, read all the books, right? Maybe they want to be a forest ranger and go meet a forest ranger and chase all of these, investigate all these things. It's probably going to go through high school too. Because I can think of several of our kids that we thought we were doing when we got to, we thought we knew what they needed, we thought we knew where we were going, we thought what we needed to focus on, only to get in the middle of it and go, yeah, no, that's not where we're going anymore.
Right.
You're responsible for what you know at the time. So that moment when that substantial change happens, and one of them literally happened in the fall of one of our kids' senior year. So we're taking freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, aimed at a very specific objective, checking boxes. I mean, it was intense, only to discover that we didn't need some of those things that we had done.
Well, he's going to go a completely different path.
Completely different. And it would be
for.
easy to say, we wasted all that time. And yet, that's not the story. The story is nothing is wasted in God's economy. So no matter what you're doing along the way, when you do it diligently, focused on His glory and trusting Him with it, He weaves it all in. He redeems it all, nothing wasted.
Well, and to that point, one of the things I was going to say is that there's research out there that shows that high school homeschoolers score considerably more on standardized tests than their peers. But the real takeaway there isn't that they scored better on a test. It's that they are more prepared for life.
Yeah.
The colleges are recruiting them actively, not because they're smarter per se, but because they're responsible.
Right.
They're serious about their studies. And that's true for essentially most of students that are homeschooled.
Yeah.
You taught them about life, about respect, about working well in teams, about studying hard, doing their best, seeking God. And all those life skills actually help them communicate and succeed in school if they continue that route, if in jobs as they get to that position in life, better than folks that haven't been trained for life skills.
Exactly. And you know, it's one of the things that we keep reiterating is it is the little things that matter. It is the little things that separate the men from the boys. Those conversations you're having around your dinner table, those character qualities that you're dealing with, and talking to your kids about, I see these really positive things in you and we want to guard those things, but I see these weaknesses that we need to grow in you. All of that you're doing, that's what blossoms when they are in high school. That's what they take with them into college. The time management, right? The helping somebody else, considering somebody else, doing household responsibilities. Do your kids know how to sweep a floor? That's a game changer, right? Do they know how to do their own laundry? Those are the little things that when colleges and institutions, employers are looking at people who actually know how to do those things, that's what separates the men from the boys.
Well, it's true. So we've talked a lot about how to do homeschool.
Yep.
What a homeschool graduate might look like.
Right.
But I want to make sure we talk about how to do a homeschool high school graduation.
Oh yeah, you've got to do that.
Because here's the thing. When you're homeschooling, this is a family activity. We've talked so much about how family is central to what you're doing here. And these are your children. These aren't just students that are strangers. You know these folks intimately. And you need to graduate in style. Don't just let that be a Saturday that comes and goes.
Yeah.
Do it, to the nines. Do it all out. Have food and drinks and presents and presentations. speeches, pictures, the whole ball of wax with a diploma signed by mom and dad, cap and gown. Make sure you do it up right, because you want to remember the graduation no matter what. But if you've done a homeschool journey, everybody, it was a part of that.
So you may have just brought up a mind-blowing thing for many people. They're not even thinking that homeschoolers have a graduation. So here's a challenge. So some state organizations have a statewide graduation. Some of our kids did that. And then local support groups or churches sometimes have a graduation. I remember at the end of one of our really hard years, we had a year that was really bad. I don't know if you remember it. I remember it like it was yesterday. The whole year was just like a wash. I mean, we didn't progress. It was just character issue after character issue. And the more I showed up in my kids, the more showed up in me. It was just a tough year. And I remember just being so discouraged. And we were going to the conference, our state conference that year. And I was, just in tears talking to a mentor friend. And she said, "Do you know what you need to do?" And I was like, "Quit." She was like, "No, you need to go to the homeschool graduation service." And I'm like, "I don't know that we're going to make it to that." And she goes, "That's why you need to go." So you and I purposed and went to that homeschool graduation. And I think our oldest child at the time was maybe 6th grade, 7th grade. So, I mean, not old, right? And I remember sitting there and all the graduates were coming on to the risers. And I was just sitting there crying. And this woman beside me, whom I did not know, put her arm around me and she goes, "Which one's yours?" And I said, "None of them." I don't know any of those people. I just want to get to that day because it just seemed like a world away, right? If you find yourself, or not even if, when you find yourself discouraged, I would challenge you, find a local homeschool graduation and go.
Yes.
Go. I mean, you need to have people that are further down the path, people that can hug you and encourage you and take your calls when you're whimpering. You need that, but you need a vision of what you're working toward. And you're right, celebrating that day, celebrating the graduate, celebrating the principal, the teacher, the family that took place in. Yeah, we had a lot of great graduation parties here. Dancing on the driveway is what I always used to call it.
Well, because there's a lot of shared memories.
There's
Everybody
a lot.
was part of it and actually participated in some way. I'm going to mention our very first graduation.
I was hoping you were going to, yeah.
So when we were 13 years into this journey, our oldest is ready to graduate. We're doing our first homeschool graduation. And one of my favorite pictures from that event
It's a great picture.
Was my oldest son, who's 18, with his youngest brother, who's 5 years old at the time. So one's got his cap and gown on, the other's just starting. And I realize we're halfway through this journey.
We're halfway through. I mean,
we got 13 more years to go.
And I think it was supposed to feel like the downhill, but it felt like the uphill to me, right? But that's a great picture. I remember that picture. Charles sitting there with Benjamin, and that's what it is, right? It's this long journey, and high school is a great part of it. And I'm with you. Don't quit when you hit high school. I mean, this is your moment.
Yeah, so remember, the most valuable diploma out there is a homeschool high school diploma. I'm Davis, this is Rachel, and we've been talking about homeschooling during the high school years.